Welcome back. We are in happier places in our story, so the kids can come back into the room. It's John chapter 20. We'll start at verse 19. Jesus has risen from the grave. He has assigned Mary Magdalene the job of being the first evangelist of the risen Lord, first missionary, and her first target are the apostles who are still wandering about, rather clueless. And that's not an insult, by the way. I would certainly be clueless if I'd been one of them. Again, we had had 2,000 years to get used to this story. So this is all breaking new to them. And it's in a very dangerous time. People would still be roaming the streets. Bits of the mob, because you can always find a mob if you want a mob, are still hunting for Jesus's apostles. According to Matthew, there were some people who were raised from the dead that were walking around as well. We have zero information about that from the other Gospels or from the other writers in the New Testament or from history. So not sure what happened there and why the others didn't talk about it. But you've still got Romans on heightened security. And so the apostles, in one passage here, says that they were back in their homes. In the other scriptures, we find them in a locked room. I can see why. But let's go. Let's chapter 20. Verse 19, on the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for fear of the Jews. Again, John uses this phrase a lot. He's referring to the leaders, not to the bulk of the people. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Okay, that's probably the best opening line that he could have had, don't you think? You're in a locked room. You're already afraid. You've been told Jesus was raised from the dead by Mary Magdalene, but the other Gospels make it very plain that they thought, no. And they did not accept what she said. They wanted to see it with their own eyes. And it wasn't just Thomas, it was the group. And so there they are in a locked room, and all of a sudden you look around and Jesus is there. And I'm fairly certain there wasn't an audible pop as he appeared, or a drum roll or thunder from heaven. That just didn't seem to be Jesus's style. It's just one moment he wasn't there, and then you turn around and you do this spit take or double take, whatever you want to talk about, and there's Jesus. And the first thing he says is, "Cool, just cool. Everything's cool. Peace be unto you. It's fine." And when he says it's fine, it's not like when your wife says it's fine. He really meant it's fine. This is all good. What amazes me is because I would have wanted to see it. Frankly, I would have wanted to see the reactions. I am pretty sure there was a bit of time between the "peace be with you" and the next phrase, because people are, "What? How?" And they're moving about, jumping up. Maybe chairs falling over if they had chairs, weren't sat on the floor in pillows and the like. I really enjoy envisioning this in my mind. And just a real quick aside, people ask me all the time. I get questions several times a month, at least. Have you seen Chosen? Have you seen Chosen? I have seen clips of 2 episodes. I have heard that it's really, really, really good. And I have nothing against it. So why haven't I watched it? Because I have already in my head a lot of pictures. And I've actually had people write me over the years saying, "Oh, I saw what you talked about on Chosen. I see where you got that." And I'm going, no, let's assume that their take is their take and mine is mine. And I'm sure we have different takes on things. But one of the problems of being a teacher, we put up 3 videos a week, plus I'm speaking through the week, here, there, the other place, sometimes in person. Sometimes the church will have me talk to them like this, a live connection. One of the real problems is with all the reading we do and all the listening we do, that we can start saying things as if they were ours when they weren't. And I don't want to do that. I want to be able to footnote, this is where I've studied. And if I get something such as I used a lot of Gregory Boyd in a sermon series a few years ago. I mention it every sermon. I put it in every note so that when the notes go out to people who want the notes, his name is there, the book title is there. That's just, all right. So I haven't seen Chosen's take on this if they've had one, but I would be tempted to because there should be a little comedy, um, because fear and comedy are very much linked. Peace be with you is the right thing to say. It's not boo or what are you guys in a locked room or hey guys, what's next? Any of that would have freaked him out. His first thing is, it's all right. Everything's all right, which is exactly what you want to hear from Jesus when you think he was dead and you are in a locked room and you are frightened. You don't know, you have no visible protection at all. Your entire system that you've been wanting, dreaming for, hoping for has collapsed. You've got nothing to grab onto. And you're terrified for your life, for your future. You put your life on hold all of this time. And you also feel guilty because you ran away. Peter, because he betrayed, he didn't run away. He got in there close, but he had to betray Christ to do it. Others ran away. Where were they? Jesus didn't look down from the cross and see his apostles there, crying or angry. No, they weren't there. The faithful women were there. But so they feel guilty. Because you do. Survivor guilt is a real thing. When I work with military or police or any form of law enforcement, federal agents, whatever, who have gone through a tremendous horror, a combat situation, and they survived, somebody else did not survive. Survivor's guilt is just a serious issue. And it's not something you just get over. You desperately need help and to reconnect with that help along the way in the years to come. And I do a lot of that sort of work. All of that's here. And so peace be with you is the best thing Jesus could have said. And it's also the best thing for us to hear because we often deny Christ and we run from Christ and we blow it and we make the wrong decisions and we hide in fear behind locked doors of whatever sort, mental, physical, or spiritual. Isn't it nice to know that even something as big as running and leaving Jesus to die, his first message to us is, hey, it's okay. We're good. We're good. And he means it. Because when humans say that, most of the time, even if we're being sincere, there's part of us where we're saying, it's okay, but I'm going to take a while to heal. Not with Jesus. He comes and offers grace. So for all of those churches out there that preach a hellfire and brimstone God, they really need to read the Gospels and take them seriously. All right, after he'd said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The apostles were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. And so we go from he's here to joy without seeing the intervening bits. And I think, although I'd dearly love to have seen it, I think that's also part of God's grace. He doesn't show us being foolish when he could. He hides that. Like in Matthew 25, when he says, you guys come on in. And they said, what did we do? He's not going to show you a movie of your life and all your sins and such. No, he's going to say, you guys did great. Look at this. Come on in. That's who Christ is. And I don't understand why people don't like that Jesus, but they want a Jesus that's going to come in with a horse and kill the pagans. We need to rejoice that we have the Jesus who is, and not the Jesus some people want. Again, Jesus said, peace be with you. Why does he have to keep saying it? You know why he has to keep saying it. It's going to take a while to sink in. As the Father has sent me, I'm sending you. And then he breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone his sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven. I'm sometimes asked, are we able to forgive sins? I think this was targeted for the apostles, but I think it is best for us to act in our own minds, hearts, as if we can, and just be a forgiving people. forgive people their sins. And in fact, doesn't the Lord's Prayer say to asking God to forgive our trespassers as they trespass against us, or our debtors, to forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors? That's different than saying, I can directly forgive. But I think we should act as if we can and do it in the name of Christ. And the reason is really all entirely selfish. You carry around these things and you don't forgive others, you're only hurting yourself. Carrying a grudge only wears out one party. That's you. Just forgive it, move on. Jesus is saying to them that they can actually forgive sins. By the way, this is where Catholics get a doctrine about apostolic succession, that if you come from the line of the apostles, laying on of hands, a direct line, then you can also forgive sins. And that's why you have confessionals, which develop much, much, much later. That's why you have all of that in place. Now, I understand it, and I get it, and I understand their use of church tradition and the way that grows. I don't believe that that's what's being said, and there is no historical basis for apostolic succession. None. There's no direct line from Peter to the concept of popes. They try, and God bless them, because I believe that they're saved and they're Christians. I disagree with them on some points of doctrine, but it's only fair they disagree with me too. In heaven, I don't even think we're going to talk about any of it. We're just going to be overjoyed that he said, peace be unto you. Now Thomas, called Didymus, which means twin, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, we've seen the Lord. He said, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand in his side, I will not believe it. Now this goes on for a while, because the next verse says, a week later. Can we talk about Thomas? I think we need to talk about Thomas, because in my growing up years, in early 20s even, almost every sermon, it was as if his first name was Doubting Thomas. If you look at all of the Gospels and you put the stories together, you find out why Thomas wasn't in the room when Jesus was there. It's because the others were afraid to leave the room and they were running out of food. So Thomas leaves to get food. He's the brave one who will go out into the streets with the Roman soldiers, the remnants of the mob, and whatever else is going on out there, and bargain, because you don't go like you do in America or most Western countries, where you go and you buy a wrapped bit of bread and a wrapped bit of meat and wrapped bit of vegetables. No, you have to go out and go from table to table, negotiating, counter offering, and a lot of opportunities for people to see your face, follow you back. Thomas was the bravest of the group. And by the way, as we're about shortly to see, whenever he sees Christ, he is the first of the apostles to refer to him as my Lord and my God. By the way, we know a lot about the life of Thomas after. It's mainly tradition, but the tradition is so solid that it borders on history, and there's some history to back it up. So I'm going with it. It shows that he went east and spread the gospel faster and farther than the other apostles did, making it all the way to India, the Goa region of India, where there are still churches there to this day that trace their roots to Thomas. So don't call him doubting. He's a brave man. A week later, his disciples were in the house again. Where are they? In the house. Where did Jesus tell them to be? He said, I'll see you in Galilee. Whenever he ascended, remember that whole thing? He said, I'll see you in Galilee. Go to Galilee. Go to Jerusalem, wait for the Spirit, then go to Galilee. They didn't go. They're afraid to leave the locked house. A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. Once again, that's the best opening line. That's what you're going to need when the door's locked and you turn around and there's a new guy in the room. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Now, something else you might want to notice, if you go back into verse 20, Jesus showed the other apostles, here are the scars and my side. Thomas didn't need to see those. They saw them. They were overjoyed then. He didn't need to see. My Lord and my God. Man of great faith and courage. Then Jesus said, "Because you've seen me, you believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." The phrasing there, "and yet have believed," is good. That translation, it's good. But the words there, if you remember John 17, also mean you. Because we haven't seen the scars. You and I haven't seen the side or the hands or the feet. But we believe. And that impresses Jesus to the point, said, "Hey, I'm really glad you believe, but you're believing because you see. Wow, the blessings that will come to those who believe that haven't seen, that don't see, but they believe." That's you. Jesus is excited about you. Jesus looks up to you for having faith without sight. How is that for good news on a midweek Bible study? Well, Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. What a wonderful verse. Wonderful verse. Well, now we go to the closing days. And so chapter 21. Afterward, Jesus appeared again. Do you notice that he doesn't hang around them? He's on the move. I would love to know, who's he talking to? Where's he going? But we don't get that information. So once again, Jesus appears to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. That's the Sea of Galilee, by the way. It had the name of whoever was in charge at the time. It happened this way. I love the way that the story's set up. And here we go. Simon Peter, Thomas, Didymus, Nathanael from Cana and Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them. And they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. So just a real quick thing to disabuse you of something you might have been told before. You might have been told that they got rid of everything they owned and followed Jesus. No, their families were still running the fishing business, evidently, because the boats they had when Jesus said, "Follow me," were still there working and still part of their family, and they could still use those boats years later. So while they gave up quite a lot for Jesus, we don't need to overstate it. They let their business continue. Good for them. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" This would not have been unusual. People in many places in the world still do this today. They go down to the dock and wait for the ships to come in to see if there are any fish. And if they're still hovering out there, they may call and say, "Are you catching anything?" I've been in some of these places. I'll probably be in more because of the way our Safe Harbor Church has been growing in distant lands. And I'm hoping to get to see them as long as my health and your funds allow me to do so. Which, by the way, thank you. So that's not unusual. That's not a giveaway. So they say, no, we haven't. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some." Now, I've learned something about fishermen. I'm not a fisherman. I have fished, not most of the ways that people fish. The only fishing I've ever done was as a boy with a bobber and a hook with a worm on it. My father-in-law is a fly fisherman. I have good friends who are fly fisher people, And they just, to me, it's drawing pictures in the sky with string, but they love it and they laud it. And so, fisher people, I love you lots, but I'm not one of your clan. I'm not one of your group. That said, I have noticed by just sitting in the groups of fishing people that they are really quick to give advice. You come along, what are you catching? What are you using? Well, what about this? It's almost like being in a group of men and they say, where are you going? And I might say, well, I'm heading to Detroit. One of them might say, well, then how are you going to get there? I hate answering that question because as soon as I do, alternatives will start. Well, you don't want to go that way. You want to go this way instead. Well, no, you might want to. And it's just, they love to give advice, don't they? Golfers are the same way. Well, you're holding your nose wrong. Okay, all right, fine. For some reason, they figure, why not? We're already on the water. So they throw it out to the right side. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of the fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it's the Lord. I love that. They didn't know who he was. There's a random stranger out there, and they're going, okay, why not? We're already wet and tired. Let's throw the net out there. They do, and one of them looks at the other and goes, that's Jesus. That's the only way this happened. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it's the Lord, he didn't even check for himself. He didn't even go back and look a little closer. He didn't yell, is that you, Jesus? He didn't do any of that. He wrapped his outer garment around him, for he'd taken it off. You're in your underwear or naked in the boats. For reasons that should be obvious when you only have one set of each, outer and inner gear. But took it on, he wrapped his outer garment around him, so he just tied that, jumps into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, which makes a lot more sense. But Peter is impetuous. He's not going to hang about. If you remember, he was the first one to leave a boat during a storm, and the only one to leave the boat during a storm. He arrived second at the tomb, but he was the first one to run right in. He didn't even slow down. I love Peter. Peter's the best. I feel in many ways I'm like him in that I've spoken before I've engaged my brain, and I've engaged my feet before I've engaged my brain as to what's going to happen here. But he seems to be a whole lot more extroverted and energetic than I am. So, but I love him. I love him. The other disciples followed in the boat, makes sense, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. He already had fish. You ever noticed that before? Do you guys have any fish? No, we don't. Well, throw your net over there. You'll get some. Why didn't he say, I've got some? Want breakfast? This is a great chapter. This is a lot of fun. If you're not having fun with this, you're not paying attention. You need to go back and read it again. Bring some of the fish you've just caught. Simon Peter climbed aboard and dragged the net ashore. He doesn't even wait for the others. He just runs out there and starts yanking. But I get it, not just because he's Peter. He'd really let Jesus down in his head. He denied him 3 times. He cursed when he did it to make it more authentic. And the only passage we have will come in the next gospel, and the last gospel we're going to look at, which is the Gospel of Luke, where there's just one line, and Jesus met with Peter on the road. And after then, Peter is a whole different guy. He is 100% all in. Whatever Jesus says, let's do. Jesus says, why don't you bring some fish you just caught? He didn't wait for the others. He runs out, jumps on the boat, starts hauling on the net. The same net that all of them together couldn't bring into the boat. I love that. It was full of large fish, 153. They give you an actual number. But even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Let's stop and talk about this, because this throws from people going, well, how did they not know it was the Lord? Because he came back in the body that he lived in before he left. And that body had been grossly abused. It had been beaten. Teeth would have been missing. There might be an eye which is out of the socket and didn't go back in. There are stiff movements because he is in a body which never had the chance to heal. He doesn't come back in this glorious, strong body, Jesus, but now Jesus 2.0, even better. It took a while. That's why he shows them, I'm the guy that was on the cross. It took them a while. The guys on the road to Emmaus, they had to go through that whole process of listening to him, watching him, and then saying, oh my goodness, I know who this is. We don't really, unless you live in some places or you've been the victim of a crime, you don't really understand what being hit looks like. One of my favorite movies is the John Ford directed, John Wayne starring The Quiet Man. And one of the reasons is that watching that movie reminds me so much of my mother and the little Irishness that would come out in her. But one of the great scenes in it is where John Wayne and another character who is his brother-in-law, they have a fist fight that goes all the way through the town. And they're big people and they're trading punches. First of all, trading punches is a really bad idea. It's just really stupid. Punching's a bad idea. This thing's not built like a hammer. It will break your hand. But they're not broken and their jaws aren't broken and their teeth aren't on the floor and their nose isn't flat and their eyes aren't swollen shut because it's a movie. But when you see somebody who has really been beaten, you don't recognize them. It may be weeks and weeks before you recognize them. We don't know how long Jesus has been out of the grave, but evidently his body hadn't healed to the point where they can just go, that's Jesus. They're kind of circling him. Nobody asked. They knew it was the Lord, it says. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Well, I want to hold off. I know we've got about another 3 minutes in this class, but I'm going to hold off because the next portion needs a bit of explanation. If you want to go ahead and read ahead, you can. No spoilers. And then if we finish this, which I do believe we will immediately start the book of Luke because that's what people have asked for. And that way we'll have done an entire New Testament, although we have spent about 4 times as much time in the Gospels as we did with the rest of the books. And I hope that's okay with you. Just Jesus stories because we all need more Jesus. Thank you. Please subscribe, hit the bell, hit like. It matters more than I wish it did. Also, if you're able to give to us, please do. If you have questions, info@oursafeharbor.com, and check out our website, oursafeharbor.com, but also our new streaming site. Now, we're still going to stream YouTube, Vimeo, all the places, right? But we've got a new site, live.oursafeharbor.com. The reason we have it are twofold. One, we can moderate discussions on there, get prayer requests, assign prayers. We can do all sorts of things there. Second, it's a lot better picture and audio than running it through the degrading of the video that these other sites require. And the big one is, what if YouTube decides they don't like what we're saying and they decide to ban one of our videos? We have a site they can't take down. Same with Facebook, Instagram, and the like. We have a place that they cannot take. That's a win. So check that out. God bless you. We'll see you next week. Cheers.